Hello and welcome to What Happened At for SummerSlam 2025 Night 1, because of course this year it's a two-night SummerSlam, but this is What Happened At Night 1. Kicking off the show, of course, we had Cardi B coming out, telling the audience to enjoy SummerSlam. It was a great moment. Everyone in the crowd had fun. We had a lot of fun watching it. Don't miss this. Now, the first match of the night, we kick things off with Jay Uso coming down to the ring, yeeting everywhere. The crowd was loving it. His entrance, it's fun. It's fun. I enjoy his entrance. I can't complain with a Jay Uso entrance. Then comes out Roman Reigns. Big entrance, big pop. Of course, it's Roman. Now, after about 13 or 14 minutes of entrances, the in-ring action finally begins. All four of them just start brawling, going at it straight away. Then, of course, Roman with the ultimate heel move. He calls for Jay's entrance again. They get up on the ropes, they're starting yeeting everything, but of course they get cut off at this point. The heels drag Roman out of the ring, but they didn't account for Jay, who took everyone out with a classic Uso splash. Now Jay took the action back to the ring, but Bron Breakker ran the ropes with some incredible speed. I genuinely don't know how he does it, and flattens the former world champion with a huge lariat. Breakker then took Roman on the outside with a shoulder tackle straight to the face of Roman. It looked gnarly, it was big. I don't know how he gets the speed and the height. Then what followed up was several minutes of both Brons on top in this match, working over Jey Uso, during which Bron Breakker mocked Roman Reigns. It kind of turned into SummerSlam the musical there. He started doing the Roman Reigns, Roman Reigns, but he did a parody by saying you should have stayed away. It was good stuff. It's the kind of thing that I really enjoy in this type of match. It looked like things were turning around as Breakker went for a crossbody over the announce table onto Jey Uso. He misses, lands on the announce table. This allows the faces to get back into it, of course. But they didn't quite get back into it, because when Jay went for the hot tag, he was cut off. After some back and forth, Uso managed to finally make that hot tag, and Roman Reigns got into the match. Pretty soon after he got in, he decided to take every risk by jumping over the top rope. He went for a tope, but then kind of overshot the mark, and it was very reminiscent of Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. We did cringe a little bit watching it in the office, but he seemed to be okay. The big dog then followed up with some Superman punches to Reed and Breakker, but what Reigns didn't realize is that Bronson was the legal man, and then ate a cannonball for his troubles. A little bit later on, though, Breakker tried to spear Reigns through the barricade, but he ran straight into a Superman punch from Roman himself. One big ooh-ah later, and Reigns speared Breakker right through the barricade. Bronson then, silly Bronson, telegraphed he was going to hit a tsunami by shouting tsunami. Why would you do that, Bronson? Obviously, by this telegraphing of the tsunami, he didn't manage to hit it. Reigns came in, hit him with a Superman punch, and got back into the match. The babyfaces then followed up with a 1D to Bronson Reed. Breakker somehow managed to recover and break up the pin, but then, obviously, Bron went for the spear to Uso. Roman pushed his cousin out the way, took the spear himself like the valiant babyface he is. Uso then hit Breakker with a super kick before hitting a spear and an Uso splash to Bronson Reed to get the victory. A big victory for Roman Reigns and Jey Uso to kick off SummerSlam Night 1. So next up was Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair challenging the Judgment Day for the WWE Women's Tag Team titles. Now, of course, the story going into this is, will Charlotte and Alexa be able to coexist and win the tag team titles? I guess we'll have to see. Now, the champions took control early into this match, slowly working over Charlotte Flair, which unfortunately didn't really get the crowd excited. I think they were still kind of burnt out from the last match, but either way, they were trying to build them up. Flair eventually managed to make the hot tag to Bliss, although her time on top didn't exactly last very long, with Perez avoiding a sister Abigail with a rake to the eyes of Bliss. Bliss did manage to fight back though, as she went for a twisted Bliss, but of course Perez managed to get the knees up again. And at this point, what followed was a long period of just Judgment Day on top, just making sure that they were cutting off all tags, making sure that Alexa Bliss was exposed, and they didn't get Charlotte Flair into the match. After several minutes, it was of course Charlotte's turn for a hot tag. She gets in, she takes out her opponents with a crossbody from the top rope before whipping Rodriguez with an inside the ring buckshot lariat. Flair nearly won the match with an incredible moonsault to both Rodriguez and Perez, and this really woke the crowd up. However, that miscommunication, the can they coexist, It finally came to a head as Alexa Bliss accidentally punched Charlotte Flair right in the face. I couldn't believe it. The heels obviously took advantage of this and tried to get a pinfall on Flair, but Bliss broke up the pin with a neck breaker. Alexa dragging Flair to the corner for the tag, and after escaping an inside cradle attempt, Bliss set up the Sister Abigail, but then Charlotte Flair in the corner behind her, teasing a little bit of dissension, teasing a big boot to Alexa Bliss. Instead, she kicks right past her into Rodriguez. Bliss hits the Sister Abigail and gets the pinfall. We have brand new women's tag team champions in the best friends of Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss. Then we had the rubber match between Sami Zayn and Karrion Kross, with Zayn winning their first match of Night of Champions, then Kross winning their second encounter on Raw a couple weeks ago. Now, their SummerSlam match had this stipulation that Sami Zayn had to say Kross told the truth if Karrion Kross won, and if Kross lost, he'd have to say that he was wrong about Sami Zayn, so keep that in mind for the finish. Now, Karrion Kross dominated the opening moments of this match, and eventually demanding that Zayn say Kross had told the truth. This, of course, only fired up Sami Zayn, though, and he clobbered Kross with some punches in the corner. Zayn looked to go for his signature Blue Thunder Bomb, but Kross avoided it and followed it up with a Saito suplex for a very close near fall. That pesky Scarlett on the ringside then got involved and pulled out the steel pipe, passing it to Karrion Kross. While the referee was distracted by Scarlett, Kross tried to use the weapon, but Karrion ran straight into a Blue Thunder Bomb. It looked like this could actually be it, but of course, no one actually gets beaten by a Blue Thunder Bomb, so it wasn't. Kross kicked out at 2. This only fired up Sami Zayn, who got slightly annoyed at this point and started just going to town on Karrion Kross. Eventually, he was dragged off of Kross by the referee. He got a bit of a talking to from the referee at this point, who was getting a bit fired up. He got a bit angry at Sami Zayn, and while they were having their interaction, Scarlett ran round the ringside area, stood underneath Sami Zayn, and passed him the steel pipe, laying it at his feet. Zayn looked very confused and confuddled at this point. He picked up the bat. It looked like he was considering maybe using it, but of course, Sami Zayn, he's the ultimate babyface. He threw that bat to the floor. He was never going to use it. However, with Sami Zayn throwing the pipe to the outside, this allowed Kross to roll up Sami. Sami, though, managed to kick out. Zayn then dumped Kross on his head with a beautiful exploder suplex that looked very, very painful in the corner, hit a haluva kick, and of course, scored the win. Now, the stipulation for this, as I said earlier, was that if Sami won, Karrion Kross would have to say that he was wrong about Sami. Now, they didn't do anything after the match at this point with that, so I guess we're going to get that on Raw. We'll have to wait and see. After the match, though, they did pay a little tribute to Hulk Hogan, who recently passed away, and announced the attendance of 53,161 people inside MetLife Stadium for SummerSlam Night 1. Then it's time for the WWE Women's Championship match between Tiffany Stratton against Jade Cargill, the winner of the Queen of the Ring tournament. Starting off strong, Jade Cargill really dominated the opening moments of this match, following a big boot to Tiffany Stratton after Tiffany sort of offered a handshake to kick the match off. However, this didn't stop the champion for long, who fired back with a suicide dive to the outside, although unfortunately the crowd still wasn't quite into the matches so far tonight. Back in the ring, Stratton hit a swanton bomb, but Cargill kicked out at 1. After some back and forth action, Jade hit an airplane spin into a Blue Thunder Bomb that she calls Eye of the Storm for a very close near fall. Stratton, though, fired back with a rolling senton and went up for a prettiest moonsault ever, but Cargill was very quick to get back up and threw Stratton to the outside. Stratton, though, very quickly fired back with a Falcon Arrow, which left both women down on the mat. It looked like Jade Cargill had it won as she hit Tiffany Stratton with a Jade, but unfortunately, Tiffy's leg was actually touching the ropes when she pulled her leg back for the pin. Next, there was a moment where Tiffany Stratton was in the opposite corner. Jade was in the other corner. She starts doing the backflips, which I like to imagine adds a 2 times damage multiplier every flip that she does. But Jade catches her, goes up to the top rope, and looks like she's about to hit a top rope Jaded. Surely that would put the match away. But no, Tiffany manages to counter into like a front flip code red type thing. It takes Cargill down to the mat. Once Cargill's on the mat, Tiffany turns around, hits the prettiest moonsault ever, and surprisingly, she gets the win. I think a lot of people expected Jade to win this one, so it was a real shock that Tiffany is still your WWE Women's Champion. It's time for the semi-main event of the evening and the highly anticipated debut of Jelly Roll. Of course, Jelly Roll is teaming with Randy Orton, going against Drew McIntyre and Logan Paul. Drew was stranded in Scotland this past week, but he has made it to MetLife Stadium. The crowd in unison was singing Voices. It never gets old hearing them sing that at Randy Orton. Now, Randy Orton and Jelly Roll making their way to the ring, with Jelly Roll deciding to wrestle in a shirt for some reason, like a goth Right to Censor member. Now, the match wasn't even underway yet, and Logan Paul decided to welcome Jelly Roll into the ring with a quick, cheap shot punch to the face. And, you know, props to Jelly Roll. The bell rang and he tagged himself into the match. He wasn't letting Randy Orton start this thing. He wanted to go one-on-one with Logan Paul to get things started. However, this did seem to annoy the Viper a little bit on ringside, but eventually he relented and allowed Jelly Roll to get on with it. Mr. Roll started things off with an elbow and then a shoulder tackle, which actually looked quite good. Good, but, you know, props to Jelly Roll for his first time in there. He hits a scoop slam and then a jumping elbow complete with a Ric Flair-like strut to Logan Paul. In comes Drew McIntyre and Jelly Roll. He kind of realizes what he's got himself in for. Drew is not a small man by any means. Jelly Roll channeled Dusty Rhodes somehow with some punches to Drew McIntyre, but eventually ended up with a Glasgow kiss for his troubles. McIntyre then proceeded to work over Jelly Roll, trying to keep him in. You know, you've got to lock in those rest holds at some point. Then, of course, Logan Paul gets tagged in. He decides to take some to Jelly Roll. And at this point, the crowd was chanting something that Netflix decided to censor. I've really no clue what it could be. We then get to the outside of the ring, and Jelly Roll gets set up on the announce table. Now, at this point, I'm thinking, surely he's going to move out of the way. Surely Jelly Roll is going to move out the way. There is no way they're going to put Jelly Roll through the announce table. Even at the point where Logan Paul was standing on the top turnbuckle, getting ready to dive, I genuinely didn't think Jelly Roll was going through the table. But then, Logan Paul takes the air, hits a frog splash, and goes crashing through. This kind of takes Jelly Roll out of the match for a little bit. Mrs. Roll, who's sitting front row, looks very concerned for her husband. Obviously, at this point, medical personnel immediately rush to check on Jelly Roll. He's looking haggard, completely knackered. They're trying to make sure that he's okay, because he props to him. He took one hell of a bump there. This allows the heels to remain in control, really working over Randy Orton as Mr. Jelly Roll is taking what looks to be up the ramp. It looks like he's done with the match. Logan Paul adds a little bit of insult to injury there, waving him goodbye as he walks away. However, at this point, Jelly Roll starts to notice that Randy Orton needs a little bit of help, and, well, he's the only one that can offer it. So Jelly climbs back up the steps, as Wade Barrett calls him, looking like the Walking Dead. He extends his hand, and he's tagged in for the hot tag. And what a hot tag it is. He gets in there. He gets a choke slam on Logan Paul, which it did take a while. He's holding them for quite some time. Hits a choke slam. Drew comes in. He dodges a clothesline by Drew. And then he hits a black hole slam. He hits a power slam on Logan Paul, but McIntyre is very quick to break up the pinfall with a Claymore kick straight to the head of Jelly Roll. Orton out of nowhere with an RKO to Drew, but unfortunately wasn't able to capitalize as Logan Paul launched the Viper into the ring post. It was down to Logan Paul and Jelly Roll, but Paul, with the advantage here, took Jelly Roll down and hit a frog splash for the pinfall. Honestly, it wasn't a bad first effort for Jelly Roll. He took a pretty solid bump through that table, hit a black hole slam. Good job, Jelly Roll. We've done it. We've got to the main event of the evening. CM Punk versus Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. CM Punk in some fantastic, no pun intended, fantastic 4 gear, because it's clobbering time. He's going to do it, guys. He's going to do it. Now, the action in this one began slightly slow, with Gunther really in control and dominating the early goings of this match. It really built up to Gunther finally hitting that first chop as Punk tried to avoid it. And when it hit, it was very, very satisfying, even as a Punk fan. And after that first chop, they didn't really stop. Gunther chopped his chest numerous times, the back of his neck, even his hamstrings, which that's gotta hurt. And after all these chops, Gunther firmly remained in control of the match. An abdominal stretch really tried to work on the challenger. Punk managed to get back into the match though with an abdominal stretch off his own and attempted the first go to sleep off the match, but Gunther, the champion, countered into a choke. Punk though did try and roll this through. Unfortunately, it wasn't a victory there for Punk as he was unable to capitalize and walked straight into a big boot. More chops soon followed and Punk soon found himself hung over the ropes with Gunther pulling on his head with a big boot. It looked very, very sore. Really, at this point in the match, it looked like Punk was really outmatched by Gunther, who was just dominating and countering all the offense that Punk tried to throw at him. Every time Punk got an opening, Gunther went back on the methodical offense to really keep the challenger down. However, after some back and forth submissions, Punk managed to reverse into a figure 4 leg lock and rolled through into a sharpshooter. At this point, Michael Cole was very quick to remind everyone that Gunther has actually tapped out at WrestleMania 41 earlier this year. However, Gunther managed to reach the bottom rope and break the hold. Despite Punk having the advantage at this point, it didn't last very long. Gunther got back in control and really just continued his domination of Punk. The crowd was firmly behind CM Punk though, and he used that as motivation. Unfortunately, he did walk straight into a powerbomb for a near fall. After some more back and forth action, Gunther fired back with a big back body drop and a frog splash from the top rope, but Punk remained in the match by getting his shoulder up and breaking up the pinfall. Punk almost hit a GTS, but Gunther escaped and connected with another powerbomb. Gunther followed this up with a shotgun dropkick before a third powerbomb to CM Punk, but Punk managed to kick out once again. This caused an eruption inside MetLife Stadium. In a really grim spot, Gunther placed CM Punk over the top rope and just stomped onto the chin and the face of Punk. Gunther then took the opportunity to gloat and really enjoy his domination of the match. Standing on the announce table, he basked in the boos from the fans in MetLife Stadium. Gunther then mysteriously hid under the announce table and came up with a crimson mask. Punk, literally smelling blood in the water, hit Gunther with a running knee and bulldog in the corner and followed it up with a big flying elbow. After one go to sleep, Gunther was still standing, so Punk got him back up once again for a second go to sleep, and Gunther was out for the count. We've a brand new world champion in CM Punk, and I'm buzzing. I'm really buzzing for Punk, and surely nothing's going to happen to ruin this moment. With tears in his eyes, Punk was finally the world champion once again. He raised the title above his head and burned it down. It all came crashing down. Seth Rollins walked out onto the stage on crutches as Paul Heyman carried the Money in the Bank briefcase. It looked like that was it as Rollins turned around and headed for the entrance tunnel once again. But then he stopped, threw the crutches to the ground, and it's all been a ruse. He's not even injured. He removed the knee brace and ran full force to the ring. He hit Punk over the head with the briefcase multiple times, causing the new champion to be basically out of the match before it even began. He handed the briefcase to the referee, who rang the bell, and with one curb stomp, Seth Rollins is the brand new World Heavyweight Champion. Back in 2015, he did the heist of the century, and in 2025, he's done the ruse of the century. I can't believe that Punk has lost the title. And that is what happened at SummerSlam 2025 Night 1. Overall, a decent show, particularly the opening contest. I thought that was really strong with Jay Uso and Roman Reigns going up against Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. There was some really nasty spots in that match. Similarly, for the tag team match, it was great to see Jelly roll in there. Very impressed by the fact he went through a table from a frog splash. That was pretty cool. Props to him. And of course, the main event, it was great to see CM Punk finally win the World Heavyweight Championship. I just can't believe Seth has done it. He's left with the world title once again. Anyway, we'll be back tomorrow with SummerSlam Night 2. Stay tuned to the channel for more wrestling content.